The first 25 years of the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers, Chapter 1. On July 24, 1847, it became a great opportunity for an annual celebration in the early communities and towns of the Utah Territory. In 1897, a lavish 5-day Jubilee celebration was planned for the 50th anniversary of the event. At this time, there were about 650 living pioneers of the 2,000 or more who had entered into the valley in 1847. The honored guests were to assemble at the old Fort Square at 9 o'clock a.m. on July 20th, 1897, at the new Brigham Young statue on East Temple and South Temple streets. From here, the guests gathered in the tabernacle on Temple Square, where they participated in a program and received a ribbon and gold badge from Governor Heber M. Wells. Inspired by the Jubilee, several Salt Lake ladies conceived the idea of a society for women to remember to celebrate their pioneer parents. Anna Marie Ballantyne Taylor Hyde took positive action. She invited a group of her friends, along with representatives of influential pioneer families, to her home in Salt Lake City with the intention of organizing a society. President Hyde then appointed a committee to develop the Constitution and bylaws for the new society. At the second meeting, April 22nd, an informal discussion of the matter took place. The third meeting was held on May 23rd, and the Constitution was formulated by voting on each article. Miss Alice Merrill Horn was elected as president in 1903. She chose Isabel Whitney Sears and Elizabeth S. Wilcox as her counselors. During this administration, a yearbook was published and many fine programs were presented that explored the history of the Exodus and entrance into the valley. The Daughters of Utah Pioneers found it difficult to find a centrally located building with a room large enough to hold regular meetings. Because funds were limited, the room must be acquired without excessive cost. Business problems were often discussed with the general authorities of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it was agreed that the daughters could use the newly constructed Bishop's Building in Salt Lake City. Officers of the organization decided that the DUP meetings should be a social and literary nature and would be held on the 24th of the month. Less than a year later, they were granted the use of several commodious rooms in the Lion House. Meetings were opened and closed with prayer and included the singing of hymns and a program of recitations, vocal or instrumental music. The pioneers themselves were invited to speak on assigned subjects. Where to keep the relics, artifacts, pictures, and histories? It was decided by a majority vote of the members present at said encampment, April 1922, to incorporate said society within said limits into a corporation with such rights and obligations as may be prescribed by law, to be known as the Daughters of Utah Pioneers, to exist for 100 years from date of incorporation, for the purpose of collecting and preserving the history of the state of Utah and her people, with principal office in Salt Lake City, Utah. The daughters used various means to keep the organization prominently in public view. A banner was prepared. This banner This banner, carried by the daughters in parades celebrating the coming of pioneers into the valley. It was also used in promoting activities and events sponsored by the DUP. The new symbol would be rendered on a pin as a yoke oxen with a beehive placed above it. One of the new society's favorite means of fundraising was the Pioneer Ball. Beautiful, quaint costumes of the early days and refreshments including tea and pumpkin pie at the Lion House were popular features of this gala occasion. Although there was an admission charge of $1 per person, and the DUP members provided the refreshments, they made little profit. Therefore, in 1910, the society voted unanimously to assess 25 cents for yearly dues to be paid by each member. The ball became an annual event with the Daughters, assisted by other organizations such as the Daughters of the Mormon Battalion and the Daughters of the Handcraft Pioneers. One of the original objectives of the society was to gather artifacts that had belonged to the Utah pioneers. The daughters soon realized that with the collecting of relics came the challenge of cataloging, labeling, and housing them. In 1903, a relic hall was established with a small room in the LDS Church tithing office. Within 3 years, there was no more room for the relics and several rooms of the Lion House. In 1910, the daughters were notified there was no more room and they had to find another location. In 1911, the church gave the daughters several cases for their relics and helped them to move the first cabin log by log to their pioneer exhibit. The daughters furnished it with a rag carpet, a post bed, a flower bin, and other pioneer articles. At the present time, all relics are given to the organization by the donor with a solemn covenant from the organization that they will never leave the confines of the museum. We have 4 chartered members that we would like to honor today who were pioneers. Anne Eliza Hunter Rich. She was born April 7, 1844, in Nauvoo, Illinois. Her parents were Edward Hunter and Anne Stanley Hunter, both children of Pennsylvania Quaker parents. Edward and Anne were baptized as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on October 8, 1840. They moved to Nauvoo and were personally acquainted with the prophet Joseph Smith, who gave a blessing to little Anne Eliza shortly before his martyrdom. Anne Eliza came to the valley with her family when she was just 3 years old in the Edward Hunter Jacob Fouts Company, arriving on October 1, 1847. She received a good education and had a fondness for literature. On January 14, 1869, Anne Eliza married Joseph Colson Rich. The Hunter and Rich families had been closely associated both in Nauvoo and in Salt Lake City. Joseph was recruited by Brigham Young to help with the settlement of the Bear River Valley in Idaho. Joseph corresponded with Anne Eliza with lively letters and occasional visits to Salt Lake, and after 6 years of courting, won her heart. Soon after their marriage, Joseph and Anne moved to Paris, Idaho, where Joseph was working to survey Bear Lake County. Joseph and Anne Eliza had 8 children, and Anne was known as a devoted wife and mother. The frontier life was hard on her as Joseph did much public work, including surveying homesteads in Bear Lake County. Anne Eliza was invited to attend the first public meeting to organize Daughters of Utah Pioneers in the home of Annie Taylor Hyde in 1901. She was one of the few attendees who was not only the daughter of pioneers, but a daughter herself. In 1908, Joseph sold the resort that he had built, and he and Annie had both moved back to Paris, Idaho. And Annie soon died August 3rd, 1930, and was buried by her husband's side in Paris, Idaho. Phoebe Amelia Carter Woodruff Snow. On March 4th, 1842, Phoebe Amelia Carter Woodruff was born under peaceful and favorable conditions in a city known by residents as Nauvoo the Beautiful. She was the third child of Wilfred Woodruff and Phoebe Whitmore Carter Woodruff. They were located not far from the homes of Joseph Smith, his brother Hiram, the patriarch Brigham Young, and Heber C. Kimball, along with many other prominent members of the church. The journey to Utah was very difficult, with travelers experiencing lack of funds, weakened oxen, cholera, and a stampede that threatened many lives. Phoebe, a pioneer girl of 8, walked across the plains in the Wilfred Woodruff Company and entered Salt Lake City Valley on October 14, 1850. On April 4, 1859, she was 17 years old. Phoebe became the 8th wife of Lorenzo Snow, an apostle in the church and a close associate to her father. For the first few years of her marriage, she lived in Salt Lake, where her first child, Mary Amanda Snow, was born, only to die 2 days later. Phoebe remembered when the railroad came through Brigham City in 1869, remarking that it truly changed their lives forever. The 1870s and the 1880s were a trying time for the Smith family, as Lorenzo Snow was pursued by the federal marshals for his practice of polygamy. He was captured and imprisoned from 1886 to 1887. Phoebe moved to Salt Lake when the temple was finished in 1893 and was called as a temple worker. Phoebe Carter Woodruff Snow was present on April 11, 1901, at the organizational meeting of the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers in the home of Annie Taylor Hyde. As not only a daughter of Utah pioneers, but as a pioneer herself, always beloved for her kindness to the poor and sick, she lived to the age of 76 and died on February 15, 1919. Laura Miranda Hyde Minor, eldest daughter of Apostle Orson Hyde and Nancy Miranda Johnson Hyde, was born in Kirtland, Ohio, May 30, 1837. Soon after her birth, her father was called to join with Heber C. Kimball, Joseph Fielding, and Willard Richards as the first missionaries in England. They arrived in Liverpool on July 20, 1837. After her father's return in the summer of 1838, the family moved to Missouri, where they lived until the next spring. They moved to Nauvoo, and when Laura was there, her father went on a mission to Jerusalem. Laura stayed home to help watch the children and do chores. When she was 6 years old, she read the Book of Mormon. The prophet Joseph Smith heard her read sections of the book and was surprised and delighted. She often sat at the prophet's knee and listened to his wonderful stories, which she remembered throughout her life. She learned to love and revere him, and his martyrdom was always a sad memory to her. The family lived in Nauvoo until 1846, when they packed their belongings again and moved to Council Bluffs. She attended school wherever possible, but most of her education was gained at home. She studied French from a neighbor, Madame Bruce, learning to speak and read the language well. She also learned the art of embroidery from this woman, Laura's father tutored her in history, which she loved. Laura came to Utah with her family when she was 15 in the Henry W. Miller Company, arriving in the valley on September 23, 1852. Orson Hyde established a home on North Temple between East and West Temple Street. Before long, Laura opened a little school in a small room in the basement of their home, teaching children of Orson Pratt and her own younger brothers and sisters. Laura loved to read and to study, and she said that one big sorrow of crossing the plains was that she had to leave so many good books behind. She became a beautiful and accomplished young woman, and at the age of 19 was married to Aurelius Minor, then a rising young lawyer fresh from college. They were married on May 30th, 1856 by Brigham Young in the Endowment House. When her husband returned from his mission, he became a church attorney and gained a large clientele, providing well for his family. Laura made her home beautiful and comfortable, adding a vegetable garden in the rear and lawn and flowers all about the house. She had 52 varieties of roses, many spring and autumn flowers, and flowering shrubs. The veranda around her house made a splendid place for the children to play. Laura was a member of the Daughter of Utah Pioneers, and being a pioneer herself, she was most interested in the association. Her mental interest kept clear through all out her life, and she enjoyed her family, friends, books up until the time of her death on August 10th, 1909. Sarah Jane Rich Tobin Miller was born in Quincy, Illinois on March 4th, 1839, the first of 50 children born to elder Charles Carlson Rich. Sarah's mother was Sarah DeArmond P. Rich. Charles and Sarah had married on February the 11th, 1838 in Far West, Missouri, where they found the prospects of a good life with the saints encouraging. Soon, however, rumors of mobs and violence became a reality, and with the ensuing of the extermination order, they left the state of Illinois. Sarah was 8 months pregnant and very ill. After making a perilous crossing of the ice-choked Mississippi River in a canoe, the couple found a home in Quincy. In the fall of 1839, the family of 4 moved to Commerce, later Nauvoo, Illinois. The family enjoyed the association of many leaders of the church, including Joseph Smith, Heber, and Violet Kimball. She was attracted by the attention of a John Tobin, an Irish-born convert. They were married, and they had 2 children, a daughter Ella and an adopted boy named Alfred Curtis. At age 62, Sarah Jane attended the organizational meeting of the Daughters of Utah Pioneers at the home of Annie Taylor Hyde. She was one of the few who was not only a daughter of parents, but was also a pioneer herself, having come across the plains in the Charles C. Rich Company, an artillery company, as a child of 8, arriving in the valley on October 2nd, 1847. She was a charter member for the organization and an active participant in the society. Later that same year, on July 23rd, Sarah Jane Rich Tobin Miller fell from the steps of her home, fractured her hip, and she died on August 8th, 1926. Now we will review those beautiful women who were chartered members of the first meeting of the Utah Pioneers. From left to right, we have Annie Maria Taylor Hyde. Maria Young Dougal, Clarissa W. Smith Williams, Sarah Richards Smith, Alice S. Merrill Horn, J. P. Murdoch Farnsworth, Josephine Spencer, Jean Hyde, Annie Laura Hyde Merrill, Phoebe Woodruff Snow, Phoebe Y. Beatty, Mary Pratt Young, Minnie Horn James, Annie Lyman King, Isabel Whitney Sears, Emily Young Clausen, Laura Hyde Minor, Clara Woodruff Beebe, Hattie Binion Harker and daughter, Libby Rich Pratt, Alice K. Smith, Emma Whitney Piper, Mariah C. Ballantyne Brown, Sarah M. Farr Taylor, Anne Eliza Hunter Rich, Ida Taylor Whitaker, Marcia A. Hanks Hyde, Lenora Taylor Harrington, Julina Lamson Smith, Edna Lamson Smith, Zina Hyde Bull, Mary T. Schwartz Smith, Mary E. R. Weber, Lucy E. Woodruff Smith, Annie Wells Cannon, Nettie Y. Easton, Myra Y. Rossiter, Sarah J. Rich Miller, and there are others whose photos that are not available. The Daughters of the Utah Pioneers was founded by women who were daughters of Utah pioneers and even pioneers themselves. Daughters of Utah Pioneers exist to perpetuate the names and achievements of men, women, and children who were the pioneers in founding this Commonwealth. This goal is achieved by writing and preserving histories, collecting photos, and writing historical lessons and pamphlets highlighting the accomplishments of the pioneers. A growing organization, Daughters of Utah Pioneers, plays to outlive its original 100-year incorporation by many wonderful years.